The wine was breathing. The table was set for two. Candlelight flickered across polished silverware that hadn't been touched in hours. Across the room, the clock chimed 8 p.m., but she still wasn't home. No text. No call. Just absence. I sat there in a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled, watching the condensation gather on her wine glass. The chicken I'd basted all afternoon had long since gone dry. The playlist I'd curated, a mix of Norah Jones and soft instrumental jazz, had cycled through 3 times. Still, nothing. Tabitha, my wife of 17 years, was never late without a reason. And I mean never. She once called me from a car crash just to say she'd be 20 minutes behind. So when 8 turned to 9, then 10, and silence lingered like smoke in the air, I knew something wasn't right. At 10:23 p.m., the front door opened. She entered laughing. In heels I didn't recognize, her coat slung over one arm, her phone still glowing in her hand. "Oh, hey," she said, breathless, like I'd just wandered into the kitchen, not sat here for 3 hours wondering if she was dead. "Sorry." Dinner with clients ran long. There was lipstick on her coffee cup smile. The wrong shade. She didn't notice the untouched dinner. Didn't notice the wine. Didn't notice me. I said nothing at first. Just stood slowly and walked to the kitchen. She followed, heels tapping like applause. Or mockery. "You didn't have to wait, babe," she said, brushing past me to the fridge. "I told you it was a maybe." "No, you didn't," I said calmly. She paused, a hand on the door. I did. And right there, something shifted. Not in the room, inside me. It was small, imperceptible, but real. Like a splinter you don't feel until it festers. That night, she went to bed early. I stayed up, watching the security footage from the front door. Something she didn't know I still had access to. The footage showed her leaving at 5:17 p.m., just like she said. Only, not dressed for dinner. Not with a client. No briefcase. No laptop. At 5:23 p.m., she got into a silver sedan. The same sedan that had idled 3 doors down all week. I dismissed it as a neighbor's guest. At 10:18 p.m., it dropped her back off. I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair, the one with the subtle indent from years of lazy Sunday mornings, and just stared at the screen. She wasn't cheating. Not yet. Not in the way people define it. But she was gone. Not physically, not completely. But the woman who once laughed at my terrible jokes, who used to steal the last bite of my dessert just to hear me complain, that woman had vanished. And the stranger sleeping in my bed? She had secrets. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I wasn't angry. Not even hurt. Just curious. You see, some men fall apart when the cracks show. Some beg, plead, spiral. Not me. I ask questions. I watch. I wait. And when the truth comes quietly crawling out of the shadows, like it always does, I don't just react. I respond. Carefully. Strategically. Because if she's going to turn this marriage into a performance, then I'm ready to write the final act. But in my version, she won't see the curtain drop. Not until it's far too late. 3 days passed before she noticed I was different. I still made the coffee, hers with oat milk, mine black. Still took out the trash. Still kissed her cheek as she left for work. But something had shifted, and she felt it. Like walking into a room that's been cleaned too well. Sterile. Empty. She didn't say anything outright, of course. That wasn't Tabitha's style. She hinted. Tested the air. Commented on how quiet I'd been. I just smiled. Work stuff. That's the beauty of a well-placed lie. You tell it simply, and people fill in the complexity themselves. Meanwhile, I was building a new habit. At exactly 6:42 p.m., she texted me every night, running late again. Sorry. Different emoji each time. One night, a face with steam from the nose. Another, a briefcase. Once she added, don't wait up, meeting might go long. And every night, at 6:43, I opened the live camera feed. The feed she didn't know existed. I'd installed it in the old carbon monoxide detector in the hallway 6 months ago. Back then, I'd done it for security after someone tried to break into the neighbor's shed. Now, it served a different kind of vigilance. That Tuesday, I watched her rush in at 6:58 p.m., barefoot, giggling. A man followed. He wasn't remarkable at first glance. Clean cut. Mid-30s. A navy blazer and 2 white teeth. But what stood out wasn't his appearance, it was his familiarity. He moved through our house like he'd been there before. Like he belonged. He dropped his keys in my bowl. Took off his shoes near my slippers. Plopped down on the couch and patted the cushion like he'd earned the right. Tabitha brought him a drink, whiskey, Neat. Mine. They talked. Laughed. The sound didn't carry through the feed, but I didn't need audio to understand tone. Her body leaned in when she spoke to him. She touched his wrist when he made a joke. At 7:14 p.m., he got up, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out a novel I'd bought her for her birthday. The inscription on the first page was mine. She never even opened it. I watched him flip it open like he owned it. And that's when the question stopped being, is she cheating? It became, how long has she been erasing me? The next day, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. My old college roommate, Ethan. He worked in cybersecurity now, owed me a favor from the time I'd taken the blame for an accidental dorm fire involving tequila and a microwave burrito. Still got access to the software? I asked. Define access, he said, instantly intrigued. Within hours, I had remote control over every smart device in the house. Lights, speakers, the thermostat, and more importantly, Tabitha's personal tablet. That night, while she worked late, I unlocked it remotely from my car and started combing through her files. That's when I found the folder. Labeled innocuously, Invoices Q4. Inside? Screenshots. Dozens of them. Not of bank statements or spreadsheets. Of texts. Between her and the man from the feed. His name was Graham. They had nicknames. Inside jokes. They were planning a weekend trip to Charleston. He called her Mina. She never let me call her anything but Tabitha. I leaned back in my seat, gripping the steering wheel. My heartbeat was calm. My mind was not. She had built a second life, quietly, expertly layered over the first like a fresh coat of paint on a cracked wall. But here's the thing about paint. It peels. And I had just found the edges. That night, I didn't sleep. But I did start writing. Not a letter. Not a confrontation. A plan. Because if Tabitha wanted a performance, I was finally ready to give her one. And in this act, she wouldn't just lose me. She'd lose the version of herself she worked so hard to curate. By the end of the week, I knew more about Graham than his own dentist probably did. Divorced twice. Used to teach English. Now in consulting, which seemed to mean being vague and overpaid for things no one could verify. Lived in a loft downtown with reclaimed wood shelves and a wine fridge. Drove a leased Jaguar. Had a weak password on his Instagram. Ramen34. Capital R. I wish I were making that up. Inside his private DMs, I found her. Not Tabitha, exactly, Mina. The version of her that posted cryptic quotes and talked about finding her power. She sent him selfies from our bathroom, used our bedspread as a backdrop, and signed off every night with a red heart. I used to get the blue ones. There was something surgical about it all. Cold. Efficient. She hadn't fallen in love with him. She just relocated the part of herself that used to love me. Rebranded it. Like an old product with a new label. But here's where it gets interesting. Saturday night, she asked if we could have dinner. Just the two of us. No phones, she said. I want to reconnect. Now, if you're imagining some grand confession, an unraveling of guilt or remorse, don't. She wore a sundress she hadn't touched in years. Lit candles. Even made that quinoa salad she pretends to like when she's trying to impress my mother. It was all too staged. I played along. Smiled. Poured the wine. Asked how work was. She gave polished answers, like reading from a script. And then she said it. I feel like we've been distant, she said, tilting her head just enough to seem sincere. Like we're two roommates more than a couple. Do you ever feel that? I took a long sip of wine before answering. Sometimes. She exhaled, like that was the answer she wanted. Or needed. Maybe both. And then came the moment. There's someone I want you to meet, she said, smiling like this was a game show reveal. Oh. I asked, still perfectly composed. Who? Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. I'd seen the calendar invite on her phone. She called it. Dinner reset. Graham stood there with a bottle of wine and a hopeful smile. His shirt was tucked in too tightly, and he smelled like an upscale cologne named after a midlife crisis. He extended a hand. Graham, he said. You must be. Her husband, I finished, shaking his hand. His smile faltered for a second. Just a flicker. But it was enough. Tabitha breezed into the hallway, linking her arm with his like this was a casual meet and greet instead of an emotional landmine. I just thought, if we're going to move forward, we should be open, she said cheerfully. I nodded. Of course. Let's all sit down. The three of us ate together. Polite. Uncomfortable. A dinner party in a haunted house. They talked about architecture. Europe. A friend's upcoming gallery exhibit. I listened. Asked a few well-placed questions. Like, Graham, you ever been married? He chuckled. Twice. Oh, I said casually. Why didn't they work out? He shifted in his seat. Life. People change. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes they change so gradually you don't even notice until you're eating dinner across from the man they changed toward. Tabitha froze. Graham sipped his wine. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, and smiled for the first time that night. I'm sorry, I said, with just enough edge to cut. That was rude. Let's get dessert. They didn't stay much longer after that. Graham made a show of thanking me, saying it was brave of me to have them over. Tabitha didn't make eye contact when she left. And the best part? Neither of them knew what I had done the night before. Not yet. But they would. Because the chessboard was finally set. And it was my move. The day after the dinner, Tabitha left for work humming. Actually humming. Like she hadn't just introduced her husband to her side project with a wine-paired flourish. Like this was a new chapter instead of the last act. I watched her go from the upstairs window. She didn't look back. Which was fine. I wasn't the one looking lost. That afternoon, I called in sick and drove to a place she'd never think to check. My old office building downtown. I wasn't there for work. I was there for a storage locker in the basement. One I hadn't touched since I left the firm, still leased under a forgotten LLC. Inside was everything I needed. Old tools. Files. A few of our wedding photos still boxed up from the move 3 years ago. And one very useful black hard drive. That evening, when she got home, the fridge was empty. Not just out of milk. Empty. Shelves wiped clean. Labels peeled off. Nothing but a single orange soda and a post-it that read, "Oops." She blinked at it like it was in a foreign language. Did you clean the fridge? She asked slowly. I looked up from the couch. No idea what you're talking about. She narrowed her eyes. My almond yogurt was in there. Must have walked off. She didn't push it further. But I could feel the tension sliding into the room like cold air through a cracked window. A shift in tone. A hairline fracture in her, everything's fine expression. Step 1 had worked, discomfort. Step 2 came the next day. I called her office pretending to be a client. Asked for Mina. The receptionist hesitated. Sorry, no one here by that name. Sure there is, I said, keeping my voice light. Mina. She's got the dark hair, talks a lot about branding and wine tastings. I've seen her on Instagram. There was a pause. Do you mean Tabitha Whitlow? Oh, I said. Maybe. She just always called herself Mina. I hung up before the silence got awkward. That night, she was quiet at dinner. Not angry. Just thoughtful. Like she'd heard something odd that wouldn't quite settle. And that was the point. I wanted her off balance. Just enough to wonder if the walls she built around her new life had started to wobble. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, is that while she was whispering secrets into someone else's chest, I was reprogramming our life from the inside out. Passwords. Subscriptions. Financial accounts. I started with the Spotify account. Her curated playlist? Gone. Replaced with mine. Jazz. Slow, moody, impossible to dance to. Then the streaming services. Her profiles vanished. The algorithm slowly started favoring dark comedies, documentaries about art forgeries, and psychological thrillers about manipulation. Then I adjusted the thermostat settings so the house ran 2 degrees colder. Petty? Sure. But it wasn't about revenge yet. Not really. It was about space. Mental space. Enough to make her question things. Wonder if she'd forgotten something. Messed something up. This wasn't sabotage. It was erosion. Slow. Intentional. Surgical. Because revenge isn't always about the strike. Sometimes it's about the pressure before it. The quiet moments that stretch too long. The silence that whispers louder than shouting ever could. By the end of the week, she was twitchy. Kept checking her phone. Logging into apps and frowning like the world had shifted by an inch. It had. Just enough for her to lose her footing. And the final twist that week? A bouquet. Delivered to her office. No card. Just one flower. A white carnation. The same kind she once told me felt like filler. But I remember things. Especially the things she thinks I've forgotten. Sunday morning started like most of ours used to, quiet, slow, full of the false peace that lingers when 2 people are pretending nothing's broken. Tabitha made pancakes. I pretended to enjoy them. I asked her about Charleston. She blinked mid-sip of her coffee. What? Charleston? I said casually. Graham mentioned you 2 were thinking of going. Her hand paused, just a fraction, but the tremor in the cup was there. Just an idea, she said, too quickly. Not set in stone. Nice this time of year, I replied, buttering toast I had no intention of eating. She changed the subject. I let her. Later that day, she was in the bathroom, humming again. That tune she used when she was feeling smug. A little off-key, a little too loud. I stood outside the door and waited until the hum stopped. Then I knocked. Hey, the mirror's acting weird. What do you mean? Come see. She walked out with her towel still tucked, damp hair clinging to her shoulder. I stood at the hallway mirror, one hand resting casually on the frame. She looked at her reflection, then back at me. I don't see anything. Exactly, I said. No smudges. No fog. You ever notice how clear it is when someone's hiding something? She didn't laugh. Just stood there, wrapped in terry cloth and dread. That evening, I moved on to phase 3. I called her mother. Hadn't spoken to her in nearly a year. But I was always her favorite, and Tabitha had stopped visiting ever since the Charleston guy became more than just an idea. Just checking in, I told her. You know how life gets. Oh, Elbert, she sighed. It's so good to hear your voice. I've been meaning to ask, is Tabby okay? She's been distant and vague. I get more updates from your cousin's dog on Instagram than I do from her. I smiled. We've both been adjusting. Adjusting to what? The hook was set. That's for her to share. I don't want to make things complicated. Oh, don't worry, she said. She'll be getting a call from me. And just like that, Tabitha's control over the narrative cracked a little more. Later that night, she asked, Did you talk to my mother? I shrugged. She called me. That's funny. She never calls. I looked at her and said, Maybe she missed the version of you that used to care. Her face changed. Slightly. Just enough to confirm what I suspected. She was feeling the walls close in, but couldn't tell where the pressure was coming from. Perfect. The following morning, she overslept. Missed her alarm. Burnt the toast. Dropped her phone. And when she reached for her car keys, gone. Not missing. Just misplaced. They were exactly where she'd left them. I just moved the bowl to the bottom drawer of the bookshelf. 2 feet to the left. That's all it took. She stared at the empty entry table like it had betrayed her. Did you move my keys? She asked. Nope. Seriously. I looked up from my book. Why would I do that? She found them 20 minutes later, red in the face. No apology. Just an angry silence wrapped in cheap perfume. By the end of that day, her mood had curdled. She didn't want dinner. Didn't want to talk. Just poured a glass of wine and stared out the window like a woman watching a storm approach she couldn't name. Which, in a way, she was. Because here's the thing she never understood. When you turn a man into wallpaper, eventually he learns to blend in so well. You forget he's watching. By midweek, she started asking questions she used to avoid. Did you change the Wi-Fi password? Nope, I said, without even looking up. Why? My phone won't connect. We both knew I did. I even renamed the network. Before, it was Whitlow Home. Now? Guess who knows? Subtle, but not subtle enough for her to miss. She stood at the edge of the room, barefoot, holding her phone like it was broken. Her mouth opened, then closed. No accusation, just suspicion. It was growing now, spreading like mold behind drywall. She was starting to feel the echo of her own secrets. Later that night, I saw her scrolling her calendar with that same annoyed squint she used when waiting for a text that wasn't coming. It wasn't. I'd already scheduled a fake meeting on her digital calendar titled Graham, Last Chance Talk. Set it for Saturday. No location. No details. Just enough to spook her. Sure enough, the next morning, I heard her on the phone. Voice lowered. Tone urgent. Can you just tell me if you scheduled something for Saturday? Pause. No, I didn't. It's on my calendar. I didn't put it there. Another pause. No, I haven't told him anything. Why would I? That was enough for me. I didn't need to hear the rest. I was busy printing copies of emails. Not from her inbox. Those were easy to guess. No, I wanted hers to see mine. The patient, silent husband who noticed everything and never said a word. I mailed one printout to her office in a plain envelope with no return address. The subject line? Apartment viewings, you and Graham. The body of the email was bland. Logistics. Apartment square footage. Quotes. But it was real. Pulled straight from her sync drive. She hadn't even bothered to unsync her files. Rookie mistake. She found the letter 2 days later. I know because she came home early, red-faced and shaky. She slammed the keys down. Slammed the mail. Slammed the fridge for no reason. You know, she snapped. Know what? I said, sipping tea like I was in a British crime drama. Don't do that. Do what? Pretend you're not. She stopped herself. Took a breath. Started over. You're being weird. That's rich, I said. Considering I'm not the one with a travel toothbrush in someone else's condo. Her face went pale. That was the first time I directly referenced Graham's place. And it landed. She didn't yell. Didn't deny. She just stood there, caught in the open, blinking like she'd forgotten how light worked. We should talk, she finally whispered. But I wasn't ready. Not yet, I said, walking past her. You've had your turn. I could feel her panic swelling. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just tightening beneath the surface like a shoe a half size too small. She followed me into the hallway. Albert, please. Can we just... I stopped, turned to her. Watched the woman who'd once told me I was her home, now looking like she'd locked herself out of it. Saturday, I said. What? Clear your schedule. She opened her mouth, probably to ask why. But I didn't give her the space. I closed the door behind me and left her standing in the hallway with her guilt, her silence, and her perfectly curated life beginning to fray at the seams. Because Saturday wasn't a conversation. It was the stage. And she had no idea the curtains were already rising. Saturday came in like a whisper and sat heavy on the air. She spent the morning cleaning. Not tidying, cleaning. The kind you do when you're trying to scrub the guild off the walls. She mopped the already clean floors. Rearranged books no one read. Lit a lavender candle like the scent could fix tension. I didn't say much. Just moved around the house with the calm of a man who knew he was about to win without raising his voice. At 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. She flinched. Expecting someone? I asked, still holding my coffee. No. I already knew that. She opened the door. It wasn't Graham. It was Carly. Her friend. Her old friend. The one she hadn't spoken to in nearly 6 months, since the affair started. I had emailed Carly 3 days prior. Subject line. I think you should know. Inside, just screenshots. Text chains. Calendar events. One image, the invitation to their Charleston weekend. No commentary. No drama. Just the facts. And Carly, fierce, loyal Carly, had seen enough. Tabitha stepped aside, trying to smile. Carly. Wow, this is unexpected, Carly said, walking in without waiting. Yeah, I bet it is. I watched from the kitchen, slowly slicing an apple. Not for drama, just hunger. They moved to the living room. I didn't follow. Just listened. You told me nothing was happening, Carly said. You said you and Albert were fine. That he was boring, but safe. Tabitha's voice was tight. I didn't think. No, Carly snapped. That's the problem. You never think. You just perform. You manipulate. You're still doing it. Silence. Then Tabitha said, I thought you'd understand. Understand what? That you planned an engagement party while still married? That you used me as a cover while sneaking off with a man who treats relationships like job offers. I stepped into the doorway just then, calmly biting into my apple. I think she just wanted options, I said. Like a buffet. Carly turned to me. You knew. I did. Tabitha stood between us, hands trembling. Albert, why would you bring her here? I shrugged. Because you stopped listening to me a long time ago. Maybe you'll listen to someone you haven't lied to yet today. Carly's eyes softened, just for a moment. Then sharpened again, back to Tabitha. You told me Albert was controlling. That he made you feel invisible. But looking at this, I think you made him disappear. Tabitha tried to speak, but no words came. That's when I placed the folder on the coffee table. Inside, every piece of evidence. Emails, texts, photos, printouts. A full narrative, neat and complete. I was going to mail it to Graham, I said quietly. But then I thought, why not let you deliver it personally? With a bow. She didn't reach for it. Didn't even touch the folder. Just stared at it like it might detonate. Carly stood up, grabbing her purse. I'm done, she said. With this. With you. She walked out. Tabitha stayed frozen. And for the first time in months, she looked like she wanted to run. Only now she couldn't remember where the exit was. I sat across from her. No yelling. No insults. Just the slow, suffocating sound of everything she'd built beginning to collapse. Why are you doing this? She whispered. I leaned in slightly, apple core in hand. Because silence is too merciful, I said. And I want you to feel seen for exactly who you are. Monday came, and with it, silence. She avoided eye contact all morning. Her mouth moved like she wanted to explain, but the words wouldn't line up. Guilt is a poor communicator. It stammers. She left early, said she had meetings. She had no idea I'd already RSVP'd to her engagement party. You read that right. She never officially sent me an invite, but the moment she mailed them out, I got one through our old P.O. box. The one she forgot we shared. I didn't tell her. I just checked the box, attending. Under dietary restrictions, I wrote, no lies, please. By Thursday, she was unraveling in real time. Burnt toast. Snapped at the mailman. Spent an hour staring at the same spreadsheet like numbers would explain betrayal. Friday night, she stayed out late. Didn't say where. Didn't say who. When she came back in, I was on the couch watching Double Indemnity. Fitting. Why are you being so calm? She asked. Because screaming only helps the guilty sleep better, I said. Makes them think it's mutual. She opened her mouth, closed it, walked straight to the bedroom and slammed the door. I didn't follow. I was saving that energy for Saturday. The engagement party was held at some rented gallery space downtown. Fake ivy on the walls, string lights overhead, a jazz trio trying their best. She wore white. He wore smug. They stood near a "Congratulations Rory and Mina" sign, smiling for photos like their love story had a plot twist no one saw coming. Until I walked in. I wasn't dramatic. No entrance music. Just a quiet stroll across the floor in a dark suit she used to compliment, back when compliments were still currency. She saw me and froze. Visibly. He turned to see what spooked her, and then his smile cracked like drywall under pressure. I didn't approach. Just nodded. Moved to the bar. Let the tension marinate. Let them panic. Halfway through the evening, the best man gave a toast. Rory laughed too loud. She clinked glasses like nothing in her life had been borrowed. Then the microphone came to me. Unplanned. Uninvited. But no one stopped me. I took it. Tapped it once. No feedback. Perfect. I smiled. To the happy couple, I said, may your engagement be brief, your excuses longer, and your secrets, well, not so secret anymore. The crowd tittered. Nervous laughter. She turned pale. He blinked like he'd missed the subtitle. I continued. Calm. Even. Relationships aren't built on champagne and confetti. They're built on trust. And when that cracks, sometimes all that's left is a good story. I raised my glass to the version of love that isn't a cover-up, and walked off. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. Because her silence? That was the applause. I left before the party ended. Drove home. Packed the last of my things. She got back an hour later. Alone. Slumped into a chair like her spine had gone out. You humiliated me, she said softly. No, I replied. You did that months ago. I just brought the receipts. I handed her a folder. Inside, a notarized statement, witness accounts, screenshots, calendar logs, and a separation agreement drafted by the firm I used to work for. Her eyes scanned the first page. Her mouth moved like she wanted to bargain. But it was too late for negotiation. I'm not dragging you, I said. There's no lawsuit. No messy divorce. Just the truth. Neatly packaged. Quietly distributed. To who? She whispered. Anyone who asked. She stood there, stunned. Not because she was caught, but because I didn't burn the house down. I let her keep the house. Let her keep the car. Let her keep her name. But I took back the one thing she thought I'd never take. My presence. Because some people destroy you and expect you to thank them for the lesson. Not me. I learned. And I left the classroom quietly. The last thing I said before walking out. You wanted a clean slate. Now you have one. I closed the door behind me, stepped into the sunlight, and didn't look back. Because this story wasn't about how I got hurt. It was about how I healed. And sometimes, revenge doesn't scream. It signs the paperwork.